Welcome to our deep dive on the clash between federal immigration enforcement and local rights. In this video, we will unpack how consent decrees can limit government action, how district and appellate courts interact, and what it all means for detainees caught in the middle. Let's begin by setting the context for this unfolding legal battle. To start, a federal district judge found that certain aggressive immigration enforcement actions breached a binding local consent decree that restricts broad, warrantless arrests. The judge ordered the release of hundreds of detained immigrants on moderate bonds, around $1,500, because the arrests violated the decree's safeguards. However, the government immediately appealed. In response, the appellate court issued a stay, which paused the district court's release order. As a result, detainees remained in custody while the legal issues moved up the judicial ladder. This sets the stage for today's discussion of power, process, and rights. Here is our roadmap. First, we will define consent decrees and why they matter. Next, we will examine the judicial back and forth between district courts and appellate courts. Then, we will explain what a stay is and how it affects detainees. After that, we will cover the political implications. We will then consider possible outcomes and impacts. Finally, we will wrap up with key takeaways. Before we go further, please note that this video provides general information for educational purposes and is not legal advice. Laws and facts vary by jurisdiction and case, and you should consult a qualified attorney for guidance on any specific legal matter. Let's define consent decrees. These are binding, court-approved agreements that resolve disputes and set enforceable rules for future conduct. In the immigration context, a local consent decree can constrain federal enforcement practices within that jurisdiction by prohibiting broad, warrantless arrests unless specific conditions are met. In our scenario, the district judge concluded that large-scale enforcement actions violated the decree's limitations. Because the arrests did not comply with the decree, the judge ordered the release of hundreds of detainees on modest bonds, such as $1,500. If allowed to proceed, the immediate impact would be the liberation of many individuals and a wave of legal scrutiny on the legality of each detention traceable to the violation. This flowchart maps the life cycle of the dispute. It begins with an enforcement crackdown, moves to district court review, and reaches a critical decision point where the judge finds a consent decree violation that triggers an order to release detainees on modest bonds. The government then appeals, prompting the appellate court to issue a stay, which pauses those releases. The case proceeds to briefing and oral argument. Finally, the appellate court can affirm, reverse, or remand, which respectively would resume releases, continue detentions, or send the case back for more proceedings. The judicial process can feel like a seesaw. A district court may identify violations and order prompt relief, only for an appellate court to quickly issue a stay. For detainees, the timing is critical, because their freedom can hinge on which order is operative in a given week. This dynamic illustrates that due process plays out across multiple levels, where strategic appeals, standards of review, and interim remedies like stays can be as influential as the initial trial court decisions. Quiz time. The question is, what best describes a local consent decree in this context? Option A says it is a non-binding policy memo. Option B says it is a binding, court-approved agreement restricting certain government actions within a jurisdiction. Option C says it is a federal statute overriding all local laws. Option D says it is a temporary injunction that expires after 7 days. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section. The correct answer is that a consent decree is a binding, court-approved agreement that restricts certain government actions within a jurisdiction. It is not a mere policy memo, not a federal statute, and not a short-lived injunction. It is enforceable by the court and can be tailored to local conditions. On the left, the district court determines facts, applies the decree, and can order immediate remedies like bond releases when it finds violations. On the right, the appellate court focuses on legal questions and standards, often issuing stays to preserve the status quo while it reviews the case. Ultimately, the appellate court can affirm the district court's decision, reverse it, or remand for further proceedings. This division of roles explains why immediate relief can be paused, pending higher-level review. This timeline highlights how fast things can change. The crackdown occurs, then within days a district court orders releases. Almost immediately, the government files an emergency appeal and secures a stay. pausing releases. Over the next several weeks, the case moves through briefing and oral arguments. After that, the appellate court issues a decision, which could affirm, reverse, or remand. Next, a stay usually begins with an emergency motion. The appellate court evaluates several factors, including likelihood of success on the merits, irreparable harm to the applicant without a stay, harm to other parties if a stay is granted, and the broader public interest. If granted, the stay temporarily pauses the lower court's order while the appellate court conducts a fuller review through briefing and, often, oral argument. Now consider the politics. Supporters frame actions as targeted operations addressing individuals with records, while critics see illegal mass sweeps. Federal enforcement priorities can collide with local civil rights safeguards embedded in consent decrees, creating friction and litigation. The human impact is significant, as prolonged detention affects families and community trust. Moving forward, despite local constraints, signals a strategy that prioritizes enforcement objectives, even when it risks violating local protections. This table sketches 4 potential outcomes. If the appellate court affirms, bond releases proceed and the consent decree is reinforced. If the court reverses, bond releases halt and detentions continue, signaling validation of government tactics. A remand sends the case back for further proceedings, leaving bond and custody questions to the remand's terms. Alternatively, the parties might settle or modify the decree, which could recalibrate the local and federal balance and produce mixed custody outcomes depending on negotiated terms. This mind map centers the case and branches to key stakeholders. Detainees and their counsel are directly affected. Federal agencies such as DHS and ICE conduct operations and litigate in court. Local governments and their attorneys have interests tied to the consent decree's enforcement. Courts at both district and appellate levels shape the legal rules and remedies. Advocacy groups and community organizations amplify impacts and support affected individuals. The outer branches highlight possible outcomes, each with distinct consequences. Here is the second quiz question. What is the immediate effect of an appellate stay on a district court's release order? Option A says it permanently cancels the order. Option B says it pauses the order while the appeal proceeds. Option C says it converts all bonds to higher amounts. Option D says it automatically grants asylum. You may pause the video now to think through your answer. We will discuss the correct choice in the next section. The correct answer is that a stay pauses the release order while the appeal proceeds. It does not permanently cancel the order, does not change bond amounts automatically, and certainly does not grant asylum. It is a temporary measure to preserve the status quo pending appellate review. These are the essential takeaways. Consent decrees can constrain federal enforcement within a jurisdiction. District court victories may be quickly paused by appellate stays. Timing is critical for detainees because days can determine custody status. The appellate outcomes range from affirmance to reversal to remand, with varying impacts. Finally, political and policy pressures influence the strategies of both government and advocates. To conclude, consent decrees serve as enforceable tools that protect local rights by limiting broad, warrantless arrests. Appellate stays can freeze district court relief, keeping detainees in custody while the appellate court reviews the issues. The process moves quickly and has significant human and political consequences. Understanding this pathway helps clarify why these cases draw intense attention and debate. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe for more analysis. We would also love to hear your thoughts and questions in the comments so we can continue the conversation.